Welcome into channel BSR. It's Stupid Hat Night on the post-game show. I'm Jake English from the Bird's Eye View podcast, joined as always with Scott Magnus of the
Howdy.
Bird's Eye View podcast and with Cody Colston of BSR.
Hi.
Thanks, gentlemen. Look, we actually have lovely totals to go through tonight. The Orioles bucked the trend. They won on a post-game night show. They won the first game of a series, so let's get to it. At this point, we usually mope at the box score, but this time, let's take a look at it.
Whoa. Hold up a second. Again, drink of the week, Burr's Art, Birdhouse Pale Ale. Most important thing of the show. Continue.
All right. The game started off a little less rosy as the Mariners got off to an early lead. Mariners got hits from Seth Smith, 2 from Robbie Cano, 2 from Nelson Cruz, including the massive home run hit from Kyle Seager, and that was about it. The rest of the lineup was held hitless. They did manage to get 3 walks throughout the evening. As far as the pitchers on the Mariners side, Walker pitched 3 2/3 of an inning. Farquhar, can I get a pronunciation key on that one, guys?
Farquhar.
Lord Farquhar, like from Shrek.
Farquhar, 2 1/3 inning. Lowe pitched an inning and 2/3. Beimel? Joe pitched a third of an inning.
Jibby.
And that brings us to the Orioles. The Orioles were a bit of a hit parade. The only folks without hits tonight were Chris Davis, though he did walk twice, and then David Lowe, who did not get an at-bat. Pretty solid offensive outing from the Orioles, which we'll talk about in a little bit. On the pitching side of things, Miguel Gonzalez with 7 innings with 4 earned runs. Brian Mattis pitched an inning, and Darren O'Day pitched an inning to, as we say, get their work in. And that was the game. It was 4-9. So let's go ahead at this point and jump into our highlights and lowlights of the game. I'm going to start with you, Cody. What did you like best from this game?
As always, you got to get that cheeseburger in Paredes. Jimmy Paredes is becoming red hot again as he was towards the beginning of the season. I mean, he's kind of been hot the whole season, but it's scorching again. He had a 2-run homer, and he had another RBI hit, both opposite field. So, I mean, just great work from him, especially in that 2-hole. You always got to have a guy like him.
Is it great or is it well done?
Ouch.
I'll be here all week.
Ouch.
Try the cheeseburger.
Scott,
At least I didn't sing.
you are
Cheeseburger in paradise.
You are so desperate for my approval. What is your highlight for the game?
My highlight for the game is going to be Miguel Gonzalez. He did give up 4 earned runs, but one of them was on a terrible breaking ball pitch with his curveball to Nelson Cruz, who is in fuego right now. Can't really hold that too much against him, but being able to go 7 innings pitched with 8 strikeouts and only 2 walks, this is a bend but do not break attitude that I like to see from my starting pitchers coming out here, keeping the game within grasp for the team. And if you're going to win in the American League, you're going to have to put up more than 3 or 4 runs on a consistent basis. And the Orioles were able to keep the game close throughout and scratch their way back into it to tie the game 4-4, and then bust the game open to basically finally go ahead. So I'm going to give my game ball to Miguel Gonzalez because really gutsy thing to keep the team in the game the whole game.
Yeah, for me the highlight was basically just that the Orioles came back after the devastating home run by Nelson Cruz. That was pretty deflating, if I can use that word. I don't know if we're still in that awkward period where that's not allowed. But it was a deflating moment, and the Orioles came back and were larger than that awful moment. So it was good to see them come back. I feel like that kind of gut punch is easily the type of thing that would have toppled them earlier on in the month. That's the good news. What do you have as far as the lowlights are concerned? Scotty?
Manny Machado had a pretty horrible game at the plate. When he first started the game, I thought he had a really nice at-bat there to lead off. But I want to go back to the 4th inning. Orioles are down 4-2, and he grounds into a double play in the 4th with the bases loaded. Really bad situation there where you're looking for him to at least, get a sac fly, make the game 4-3. Luckily, the Orioles were able to capitalize with Jimmy Paredes, or Mr. Cheeseburger and Paredes himself. But also in the 6th inning with a man on second, has a bunt pop out, which is pretty poor as well. I'm not saying Manny had a terrible game at the plate, but that was definitely a low light for me. Those two at bats by Manny Machado.
Sure. I mean, if you're picking out lowlights in a 9-4 victory, I can understand that you have to reach at a certain point. Let me ask you real quick about the bunt. Do you like the fact that he's trying for it, or do you think he should be swinging away? Having the ability to bunt for a base hit would be nice to have in Manny's toolbox, but I'm not really sure that that's necessary, considering the fact that he's a guy that can hit the gaps and double in. What do you think?
Third baseman was playing deep. I see no issue with it, especially with someone in second base. If you lay down that bunt and the third baseman has to charge in, runner on second easily gets third base, and you've got men on first and third with no outs. I like the play.
And Paredes and Jones hitting behind you. I wholeheartedly agree. All right, Cody, what about you for a low light?
I agree with Scott with that horrible double play. The only thing worse than Manny's game at the plate tonight was probably his hand tattoos. It almost kind of deflated that whole rally, and I'm not sure we would have been able to.
Easy, loaded word.
I'm pulling my best Robert Kraft impersonation, but it almost just killed the rally, and we might not have had that big inning we did, might not have come back and won like we did if Paredes didn't follow through after that.
Well, for me, the low light was clearly Nelson Cruz. And Nelson, I feel like we should just talk at this point. I just want to love you. Like, why are you doing this to me? I told Baltimore not to boo you. I praised you for going to Manny Machado's charity thing. I just wanted to see you, even if you were in the wrong laundry. And you got to do that? What? Why? Manny Machado or Nelson Cruz hitting the home run. That's the low light of the day of the season. It hurts. It's hurtful. All right. What else did we see offensively tonight? Let's start, if we can, with the beginning of the game and that leadoff home run from Seth Smith. I was listening on the radio, so I didn't get a good look at it. Can somebody that may have watched the game tell me bad pitch, poor location? What happened?
Poor location.
Oh, okay.
I'm just going to go with poor location. That's as simple as that. Just bad location. What do you think, Cody?
Well, I was actually at work when that happened, so I can't actually chime in. But if you say bad location, I'm going to trust your judgment here, Scott.
Yeah, it was bad location. It just was a pitch that got away from him, and he was ahead in the count and everything, and it was just poor location. So, it's going to happen.
All right, the rest of the runs came from Nelson Cruz, as we mentioned. Who hit that? It was a deep home run too. I mean, it skipped off the back wall, the lower level of the bullpen. So we're at least talking the 340, the 430 zone. So it was a big home run. As far as the Orioles were concerned, offensively, I did want to mention that Chris Davis took a walk twice. He did strike out later. It's frustrating because all we want to see him do is maul the ball, but he's also keeping his on-base percentage artificially high with this walking business. What do we see from Chris Davis tonight? Is he inching his way back toward being a productive hitter, or is this just more of the same?
It's hard to say. I can never get a good read on Davis, but it just seems like he realizes the fact that he's not going to make as much contact as he would like, so he's taking a more patient approach at the plate, which I think also has something to do with Scott Coolbaugh. I think ever since he came on, the Orioles have taken a bit more of a patient approach at the plate, and hopefully Davis is buying into it right now, because his big thing is he's not making contact. When he makes contact, there's damage, but when he doesn't, it's normally a strikeout. But if he can work the count into his favor and get those walks, I'll take that. I'll take what I can get from him, basically.
My opinion: blind squirrel nut.
Ooh, you just David Lowe'd him. I'm not sure if I like that, but
it's not like Taijuan Walker has been really impressive in terms of command this game and also for the entire season. So to look at someone that has a very high walk per nine and be like, oh, Chris Davis walked twice. Well, good. He should be walking twice. He's got decent enough plate discipline. I'm not going to be like, oh, he's changed anything. I think it's just a simple situation of a really bad pitcher on the mound tonight, and Chris Davis walked twice. Whoopie-doo-dah-day.
Yeah, he's not only just looking at balls, he's also looking at a lot of strikes. A lot of his Ks are looking, which is frustrating. Yeah. He's not hitting the balls he needs to, and he's watching the balls he should be swinging at. All right, well, let's talk about someone a little more clutch than Chris Davis, and by that I, of course,
Jimmy
mean
Paredes?
Caleb, I mean,
Oh, no, Caleb Joseph. Go ahead.
I don't want to cross you here, Scott. By all means, let's talk about Jimmy Paredes. He's my most favorite Jimmy on the club right now. Let's talk about it, Scott. What did you see from Jimmy Paredes tonight?
I just saw a lot of opposite field hits, again, making really good contact with the ball. I also saw a lot of pitches that were low in the zone with him behind in the count with 2 strikes and him fouling it off and protecting that lower portion of the plate and also the outside portion of the plate. Not always making good contact with it, but allowing the pitcher to bring the pitch to him and allowing him to make that contact that he needed to do. That's why the opposite field hits happen a lot where he was able to say, okay, that's the best you're going to offer me, then I'm just going to take it to opposite field. Really good plate approach, really encouraging. Be interesting to see if he can continue that plate approach, because if he can, the Orioles may have found a diamond in the rough once again.
Yeah, and it's really interesting for Jimmy Paredes because I feel like he's not patient like the rest of them have been. We talked with Jeff Sullivan on the Bird's Eye View podcast this week about maybe the Scott Coolball effect and the fact that we've seen a much more patient Adam Jones, a much more patient Manny Machado, and while he wasn't hurt, a much more patient Jonathan Scope. Paredes is not that. He's a hacker, but he does it well. So that was excellent. I think you hit the nail right on the head with the opposite field home runs. All right, let's talk about my guy here, Caleb Joseph. Caleb Joseph was the man tonight. Snapped himself out of an 0 for 9. Cody, what did you see from Caleb Joseph this evening?
Everything that I think we've seen from him so far with his since he came up. He's a great hitter. He's willing to go. He's willing to pull the ball. He's willing to go the opposite way. He does a lot of things, and I think what he did tonight is just him returning the form after that 0 for 9. I think that was unfortunate on his end, but yeah. I'm sorry.
Well, I'll tell you what. I think the other thing about Caleb Joseph driving in a run, there were back-to-back doubles by Alejandro De Aza and Caleb Joseph, and that's certainly not the recipe for runs that you expect from this lineup. But it's certainly nice to see, especially with Caleb Joseph basically taking the entire brunt of the catching situation while Matt Wieters is out. And if you're wondering how bad Ryan Lavarnway is, look at the slumps that Caleb Joseph has survived this season and realize how many starts Lavarnway has gotten. Last thing I thought that was worth mentioning, and I'll open up the floor in case I missed anything, was a couple of stolen bases tonight for Manny Machado. The seventh of which, his sixth and seventh steal on the season, the last of which was included in him rounding the bases with basically no help from his offense. It's interesting to see Manny Machado using his legs, particularly because that's been such a sore subject. Scott had told us that he thought that Manny Machado was going to steal 20 bags and be in the 2020 club this year. I don't know, Cody, what do you think? Has he got a shot at this point?
I think he's definitely got a shot. I think he might need to pick it up on the power side, but I think 20 for 20 is definitely a reasonable guess at the rate he's stealing bags.
Guaranteed.
Guaranteed. I'm going to hold you to that, Scott. I'm going to hold you to that.
Guaranteed. It's as bad as Javi basically thinking that Jonathan Scope was going to out-homer Nelson Cruz, but that's another topic for another podcast.
Ouch.
So Machado stole his sixth and seventh bag of the year. He's apparently the only Oriole that's going to steal bases. It looked like the second stolen base was a botched hit and run. Was that just me, or did it look like they were trying to just get him moving?
Botched hit and run, and Manny Machado should have been out on the bases at that point, but a really poor delivery from the catcher at that point. So Machado got lucky with that one stolen base at the end of the game.
Yeah, agreed. Well, we'll take it. Did I miss anything else offensively, or can we move ahead to defense?
Yeah, let's move to defense and talk about how terrible the Seattle defense was in general.
Well, it started off pretty good because Seth Smith became my least favorite Mariner for the evening and pulled back what would have been a home run by Adam Jones in the first.
Incorrect. That's not right. I'm sorry.
Okay, let me hear it.
Seth Smith had decent defense there, but in reality, this is a clear failure by the fans to smack away a player that came into the stands. Orioles fans that are sitting in left field, you're on notice. Seth Smith, you had mad ups, but honestly, you shouldn't have caught the ball. So I'm not going to give him any props in terms of the defense. we should really be talking about how terrible the defense was for the Mariners from, Nelson Cruz letting a ball roll underneath his feet to, Robinson Cano allowing, a ball to trickle into the outfield. It just was, gives an indication of, the Mariners have Nelson Cruz, and yes, he hits the long ball, but without a decent defense behind you, you could easily see it with the Orioles for the past few weeks. If you don't have a good defense, you look like a very bad team, and the Mariners look like a really bad team tonight.
Well, Zach Wilt over at BSR put together a really cool overlay of the swing of Robbie Cano and the swing of Jimmy Paredes, and they're basically identical. I didn't realize that their play at second base was also so similar.
Ouch! Hands of stone.
Burn.
Yeah, Twitter was not a fun place to be tonight for the whole Nelson Cruz discussion. Should he have been re-signed by
Twitter
the Orioles?
Ever a fun place?
Not? Well, a fair point. But we got the good with the bad tonight, and we got to look at it from the other side. And we got to look at it from the other side while smugly realizing that the Orioles won tonight. So, I mean, let's go ahead and have this conversation. Nelson Cruz got paid a lot of money to go for 4 years to the Seattle Mariners.
Cruz!
Cody, what do you think of the decision, and do you think that the Seattle Mariners will have buyer's remorse, or do you think the Orioles will miss what they let get away?
Definitely saying buyer's remorse for the Mariners. Cruz could hit 50 home run. Cruz could break the single season home run record this year. Do you think he's going to pull that off the next? What's his contract? 4 years?
Yeah.
4 years. Do you think he's going to pull it off for the next 3 years? I don't think so. I think he's got this one good season, maybe half a season next year, and then you're going to see him fall off a cliff, in my opinion.
It doesn't really matter to a certain regard in that matter as long as the team has the money to do so, and the Seattle Mariners obviously have the money to do so, as opposed to the Baltimore Orioles, who are currently, somewhat, not I'm saying cash strapped, but there is some uncertainty in terms of the financial situation with the current massing dealings that are going on. That is definitely could put a dent in terms of their revenue stream and also the value of the franchise to a certain regard too. Whereas the Mariners are pretty stacked right now, both with their TV deals that are out there, but also their ownership as well. I think if it's a situation that it gets the Mariners back into the playoffs for the first time in a while, I think it's going to pay off dividends for that franchise and that organization. I think it was a good move for them as an organization. Probably wouldn't have made the same move as for the Orioles, but for the Mariners, definitely would have made that move after signing Robinson Cano the year before.
Yeah, it definitely helps when you're owned by Nintendo. So.
Well, the Mariners definitely tried to go all in offensively. We'll just see if it works for them and if they've got enough. A couple other notes for the Orioles defensively, rather. There was a nice little sequence where Miguel Gonzalez induced two foul pop-ups. Manny Machado had to range deep into foul territory to go get one. And then following up was J.J. Hardy on a nifty catch. Cody, did you take note of that play, and can you tell us about it?
I think it's just regular Hardy. I mean, he made a great running catch into the foul territory, kind of looking up and didn't really turn around to get in. I think it was just a good sign from Hardy coming back from that back injury that he's returned to form in the field at least.
And he took a nice awkward little jump at the end of it too, and came away cleanly. So that's always good to see.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's stop dancing around it. Let's talk about the pitching, and let's start with Miguel Gonzalez. Scott, what do we make of Miguel Gonzalez's start this evening?
I think if we're going to go with last year's whole thing with Bud Norris as a bulldog, Miguel Gonzalez was a bulldog tonight and kind of fought himself back into this. There was an interesting tweet that Steve Molesky put out saying Oasters are now gone 7 innings pitched or more for 5 straight games and 11 times in the past 17 games. I think that's a critical situation there because earlier this season it certainly felt like the bullpen wasn't doing great, but also getting all those innings onto the bullpen shoulders obviously was going to have an issue later on this season. The Yankees are starting to see that to a certain regard where their bullpen is starting to get taxed and they haven't been as great lately. And it'll be interesting to see how much of an issue that is for teams like the Yankees, whereas the Orioles are very rested, both due to off-the-field situations, but also the starters are going much deeper in the games, which is helping them as well. I think it's a great situation for the Orioles going forward. Good starting pitching was the key last year during the second half of 2014. The Orioles can start to get some semblance of that again. This team's going to be a first-place team once again in the American League East.
I think it also helps the O's that down below that they do have some solid options in the AAA bullpen to bring up in case anyone is needed, whereas the Yankees really don't.
Solid options, that might be. We might have
Better
to.
than Jason Garcia.
Better than Jason Garcia, but yeah, Jason Garcia is down for his shoulder tenderness, and, whatever that may be. But yeah, we'll have to see what happens. Word came out during the post game show with Buck was Mike Wright will be making another start on Saturday of this week too. So I guess we'll see if he can replicate success that he saw on Sunday, and we'll see if those AAA pitchers are as good as some people believe they are.
Well, coming back to tonight, Miguel Gonzalez, as you mentioned, ground out the win. He was not impressive at the beginning of the game. He was around the plate, but that also hurt him. And one of the stats, though, that I thought was really interesting that came up, this is from Joe Paparatto of OBP Apparel. He tweeted out that Miguel Gonzalez rarely gives up multi-run dongs. 49 of his 68 career home runs have been solo home runs. And that's Miguel Gonzalez right there, limiting the damage. And after he gave up the big home run to Nelson Cruz, he basically just shut it down. And I thought the real linchpin for this evening's performance for him was the fifth inning, in which he managed to limit his pitches, which brought his pitch count back down, which had become a bit of a danger. But he was really more himself in the fact that he was producing weak contact in the way of infield fly balls, which is something that Miguel Gonzalez, when he's on, does well. Scott, am I crazy, or is infield fly ball the way to get around a offensively packed lineup?
It definitely helps to a sort of regard of basically getting some of that weak contact. I think it's also interesting too with Joe Pa's tweet with the 49 of 68 home runs, because we're always talking about FIP to ERA differentials, and Miguel Gonzalez has always been a significant difference in terms of FIP and ERA, very low ERA but very high FIP. And it's kind of interesting in that regard of if he continues to give up solo home runs at that kind of pace, it's kind of interesting because the FIP is always going to remain high, but the ERA is always going to remain somewhat on the lower side. It's a very interesting stat, but honestly, I'm not sure if it really means anything because I think it's probably just statistical noise, and it just kind of worked out that way. If he were to pitch for another 3 or 4 years, I would imagine that number is going to slowly go away from solo home runs to 2-run home runs and 3-run home runs over time.
We're in his solo phase right now. We should enjoy it.
Yeah, so we're in the solo phase. What we're going to do is we're going to go back to the prequel, and then we're going to introduce episodes 7, 8, and 9 at that point.
I appreciate that. I do. After the game was basically decided, the Orioles bullpen came into it. We saw who did we saw? We saw Brian Madison. We saw Darren O'Day. Cody, what did you think of the choices to bring in those two particular relievers tonight?
Mattis, it was garbage time for him pretty much. And that's pretty much the only place that I trust him really. And then O'Day, you got to kind of question it, but then again, Buck knows his players, so I'm going to trust him on this one. If the guy needs his work, he needs his work. And I know you guys are looking at me like that. Don't give me that look.
But I don't do the look. That's Scott's department. I have no look. I will say, however, that O'Day and Tyler Wilson were in the bullpen, and that means that Buck Showalter has given out his first official Major League dry humping of Tyler Wilson, which I think is something we need to celebrate. Okay, and on that note,
with dry humping on a note,
let's go ahead and do our bottom line takeaway for this game. Cody, what's your bottom line takeaway for this particular game?
To me, it looks like the offense is waking up. It's been kind of quiet the past couple games, so it's always good to see it It's always good to see it wake back up, and the pitching is getting consistent, and that's going to equal enjoyable games forthcoming for fans. I think that was kind of the thing last year, is that once the pitching righted itself and the offense was there. The offense was always there, but once the pitching righted itself last year, that's when we started to see a winning ball club on a consistent basis.
Well, from your lips to God's ears. All right, Scotty, what have you got? Bottom line takeaway for this game.
Bottom line takeaway has to be Cheeseburger and Paredes. Just an amazing situation that he's doing. what can I say? He tried to avoid my optional assignment. He made it nearly through opening day. He lost his at bats to a utility infielder that could barely hit above 230.
Scotty, you're breaking up. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. We'll have to
But
pick this up next
seriously,
time.
Jimmy Paredes is amazing right now. Just what he's doing at the plate. He may be better than Steve Pearce was last year right now.
Hey, we'll take that. We will
Yeah,
take
exactly.
that.
If you want me to sing some more, I can do it now if you want.
I'm just gonna wrap up, and maybe after the show you can let us know. For me, the bottom line takeaway was that the Orioles won the first game of the series. It seems like with so many series this year, they've been behind the 8 ball just to tie it up or just to avoid getting swept. So it's nice to give them a situation where they can maybe be in the driver's seat of a series for once. And with that, let's do a quick reset for tomorrow. It's going to be Wei Yin Chen versus some guy I've never heard of, Elias Ronis.
Ronis Elias, actually.
Reynes.
Yeah.
Scotty, can you tell me anything about Elias Reynes?
Sure. So it's actually Ronis Elias. But continuing on, he actually pitched for 29 games back in 2014 for 163 innings. A decent pitcher in terms of being a ground ball pitcher, but not a really high strikeout pitcher. Really relies heavily on his fastball and especially his sinker to deliver that ground ball percentage. But over the past year, really poor performance in terms of giving up the long ball. 1.44 home runs per 9, and his fly ball ratio for home runs is 18.2%. So if the Orioles are actually able to put contact on the ball and get some hard fly balls in Camden Yards tomorrow, we should see some decent home run chances for a bunch of the players. But again, this is one of those pitchers that you think the Orioles are going to take to task. Not a really good pitcher, 92-mile-per-hour fastball with a not great changeup and an okay curveball. It'll be interesting to see whether the Orioles can lay off that curveball that he throws about 25% of the time and just sit on that fastball and changeup in certain counts. It looks like an obvious opportunity for the Orioles to go crazy on him, but crazier things have been known to happen with obscure pitchers such as this.
Yeah, Cody, remind me, how's our record with pitchers we should bat around? Aren't they? Isn't this the point at which they usually become Cy Young on us?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Cy Young's ghost is just going around possessing pitchers that face the Orioles who should normally kill us, we should normally kill. My bad. And just killing us.
To be fair, we looked at this stat last year because we always saw it the same way, and the Orioles actually did very well against pitchers that had a 4.2 plus ERA, and they hit them just like they should. There's just these rare games that they don't hit pitchers that you'd think they would do well against. But like for example tonight, Taijuan Walker, really bad pitcher so far this year, and the Orioles lit him up. Are we going to focus on the fact that, yes, they lit up a really bad pitcher tonight? No, we're going to focus on the situation of when they don't do that, we're going to hold it against them and say, gosh, what a bunch of bums.
Well, I tell you what, it is a brave new world because the Orioles have won on an evening where there's a BSR postgame live postgame show, which I think is reason enough to celebrate. And with that, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up.
Drinking lots of Gatorade, taking up space.
Orioles win 4-9. Most likely no postgame show here.
I have these wonderful dreams.
You see what I do every Monday night. Oh gosh, before we go, Scott, give a plug for Bird's Eye View this week.
Sure. So Bird's Eye View had Jeff Sullivan on from Fangraphs. We talked about Manny Machado leading off, changing some plate discipline. We also talked about Steve Pearce in the second base experiment and whether that's a good thing, bad thing, or just a really crazy thing. And we talked briefly about Adam Jones a little bit and just kind of the whole situation. We also talked about Jeff Sullivan's love for the Seattle Mariners and kind of got a preview of what to see for this Mariners series. So highly recommend going and checking out before this Mariners series ends because there's a lot of good information in there. And we can promise you this. There's no singing in this episode, and there are no right puns.
Oh, well, I'm just not going to watch it then.
And with that, Orioles win 9-4. Most likely no postgame show since the doubleheader is on Thursday, but we'll be back again on Tuesday to hopefully wrap up another Orioles win. For Cody Colson of BSR, thank you, bud. For
problem.
Scott Magnus of Bird's Eye View, I'm Jake English. We'll see you next time.